Welcome to the Monday Monologue. This week's topic, what's a preamp for? One of the things that I recently got involved in because I got a lot of people sending me emails like, build a preamp. I want to see a preamp kit. Let's do this preamp stuff. And I really started thinking about it, and most of the amplifiers I have are integrated amplifiers, and they have an input sensitivity where 3 volts peak to peak is really all they need to reach full power. So why would you want a preamp? Like, if your amp doesn't have a volume control, I can sort of understand that. But if all it's being used for is a volume control, why don't you just put one on the amplifier? And people are sending me messages about, oh, well, some of the amplifiers are, have zero gain. Well, that's not a preamplifier. I'm really trying to comprehend, like, what is the purpose of this? And how do you even test one if you don't need the gain that it has? And so that's what inspired me to build this little spud amp. And it really got me to thinking about, if we're going to use a preamplifier, why don't we use it for the first gain stage in the amplifier and separate that initial voltage amplification from 3 to 30 volts or 45 volts, up to a reasonable amount anyway, into a preamp where you have a separate power supply, you have separate everything to keep this away from the noise produced by this. And then that started to make some sense. So when I posted about that, somebody was saying, well, nobody's ever built an amplifier that left out the first gain stage. And telling me that is like telling somebody from the southern U.S., you can't feed that to your dog. Of course you can. And of course I can build an amp without a first stage. So that's what we're going to do with this guy. And it's really got me kind of thinking about my KT88 monoblocks, is potentially building them along this same topology where we're going to use a preamp that is designed to work with the monoblocks so that we can try to get the sensitive signal part away from the high current AC that we have in the output section of the power amplifiers. So anyway, that's kind of got my head thinking about that, and not sure what you guys think. So you can leave that in the comments about that idea. I'm wondering how many of the really high-end power amplifiers in the past that had a partner preamp that was designed to work with them weren't doing that same thing, and that power amplifier needed the gain that the preamp was providing for it to reach full power. Because that's the only way it makes sense. I mean, if you're having to turn the volume on your amp all the way down to like 1/10 the volume so that you can actually use the volume knob on your preamp, or you're only using like the first 10% of the knob on this, none of that makes any sense, especially when you think about how tube amplifiers work and that the gain is pretty much preset and that the volume knob isn't changing the gain, it's just changing how much of the input signal is sent to ground. And if you've got a bunch of gain here and then a bunch of gain here that you're buffering to ground, you're just going to have a bunch of noise and distortion added to the signal for no good reason. Or maybe I'm crazy, but that's the way I see that. So anyway, we're going to get started on this 6BQ5, otherwise known as a EL84 spud amp that is output tubes only. And should be a quick, simple kind of build. Hopefully can get this done in about a week so we can jump back into the preamp shootout and start trying to figure out this whole thing of preamp, amplifier, and how they interact with each other. And I'm learning here too, guys. This is stuff, just the more I looked at this, the more questions it raised. And, like I said, I said some of these ideas and I saw some people kind of jumping back real quick. Well, nobody's ever done that. It's like, well, maybe it's time they do. Because that's one thing I've learned in other parts of my life is just because somebody's never done it before doesn't mean it's not a good idea. So maybe that's a path we need to go down and do some exploration. And maybe there's a reason why it's a bad idea. But I'm ready to test and explore because that's what this channel is all about. So anyway, I hope you also agree that this learning and exploration is fun and that you're enjoying the channel. If you are, please subscribe. You know you want to. You know you want to see more of this content. And subscribing is how you'll see it. Like the video. And hopefully this week we'll have some fun building this amp. And I'll see you next week for the Monday Monologue.